September 11th, 2015. Welcome to Faces and Aces Las Vegas, a podcast where we share great Vegas stories and discuss tips and tricks on how to make your next Vegas trip a better experience. In the Faces segment, we talk to Gambling Studies co-director Dr. Timothy Fong about addiction to gambling. In the Aces segment, we talk about our addiction to Pizza Rock. Also, we have our What Happened in Vegas news and the Tip the Player segment. Our website is facesandaceslv.com, and our voicemail number is 702-381-3657. Changing 300 and a player's card. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Sitting to the right of me is
Katie.
And sitting to the left of me is
Aaron.
And I'm Chris. Hey guys, how you doing?
I'm doing
good.
Great.
Happy Sunday.
Happy thereabouts.
Wait, when is the show on?
We're calling them the day of release. So this show comes out September 11th. So this is Friday.
We can cut that. Hold on. Happy Friday.
Hey, thanks. How y'all doing?
It's good. It's good to be Friday. Love Fridays.
Fridays are awesome. How you doing, Aaron?
We didn't go to Vegas this week, so I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, this marks the first episode where we did not go to Las Vegas in between episodes. It's a little disappointing. We have to try a little bit harder.
I don't think it was a matter of not trying, an effort issue.
I got to be honest. Going to Vegas as often as we had for this show, man, it kills the bank.
Well, you seem to still have a significant amount of luck at the tables, though.
I mean, I do okay, but still.
And with our deals, it's we save so much. It's almost like they're paying us to go.
It's almost like we're losing money by
I'm not
going.
believing this. That's like when I tell Aaron I saved so much money.
Well, by
so
spending more, I saved more. Yeah, but you spent more.
One other little piece of housekeeping that we need to do is, if you listened to the last episode, we had our friend Brittany sit in with us because we were going to craft the ultimate Vegas experience for her as a Vegas noob. Unfortunately, that needs to be placed on hold. Some things came up where timing was an issue, so we will revisit Brittany's first adult Vegas trip at some point in the future. What have you guys been up to this past week? Haven't seen you. Or 2 weeks. You did something this past weekend that was very exciting.
Oh, I ran a 10K.
Yeah.
I'd like to do one in Vegas, but not in the summer. I ran a 10K at Disneyland. It was super fun, but I was feeling the effects of it yesterday, so I'm feeling better.
I just don't understand it, Katie. I will not do it, not because I don't like the athletic part of it, but you're paying someone to run in a circle.
Well, that's something you kind of glossed over. There's a 10K actually at the park?
It's inside the park. They do a 5, a 10, and a half marathon.
Yeah.
So the half marathon is mainly outside of the park. It's, goes to Angel Stadium and back and things like that. But the 10K is mainly in the park. It's maybe the first 2 miles are outside, but everything else is inside.
But then how does that work? Is the park closed while you're doing your marathon?
It's 5:30 in the morning.
Okay, so the park is closed.
Yeah, and it's nice and cool out.
Yeah.
It's cold, so you can run very well.
And then every kilometer, is there some kind of special marker?
Yeah, they have like little markers, and then they have characters about every half mile. And then they have like animals out, like they had the horses out. They have a lot of people that work at Disneyland. So they'll have the third shift of janitorial out, and then they'll have like guest services, and then they'll have high school bands, and then they'll have...
That's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And like they have... different people volunteering to pass out water. They've really stepped it up this year because in the past, the 10K only had 2 water stations for 6 miles. Oh. So now they had 5 and it was great. I was like, oh, thank you.
Does Aaron get to stand and watch?
Aaron gets to drive me in the morning and then take a nap for however long it takes me, about an hour and a half. Yeah. And then he gets to cheer me on at the end. But Disney has this really cool thing where it texts him where I am. So it will say when I start, when I'm at the 5K mark, when I'm at the half mark, that is the same as the half. Yeah. And then when I get almost done at the finish line, and it estimates how long it's going to take me.
And then afterwards, do you stay and hang out at the park, or are you just kind of done?
I hung out for a little bit, but Aaron was more tired than I was. So that was kind of funny.
You didn't even run. How are you more tired?
When you run, you get that sense of adrenaline that you're so tired that you're energetic.
Okay.
I don't believe that.
I gave you the opportunity to stay. You were done too, so I don't know about that.
Oh, that's super cool. Aaron, what marathons did you run this week?
You know, I did the marathon of waiting.
No, he did a Colombo marathon.
I did do that. I ordered seasons, the complete box set from Australia. Seasons 8 through 10 are unavailable in the United States.
I'm with you. That's a much more preferable marathon than I would do.
Absolutely.
Sitting on the sofa.
There were a lot
marathon.
of funny
Lots of
signs,
Ks.
like the only marathon I would do is Netflix, and like,
that's
why
pretty-
do all the pretty girls run away from me?
That's funny.
And it was really funny. Or like, I did all this for a small banana, because they give you a
Right,
banana
right.
at the end. And I gave Aaron all my snacks that they give you at the end, because I can't have any of it.
That's definitely worth $60.
So you pay to be part of the marathon.
Yes, when I mentioned
It's
earlier
actually
that you have to pay.
It's 120.
But you get to run through the park, and that's the fun part.
Yeah.
I did do it
cool.
one
Okay.
year, and you do get to see some of the back areas. I'd love to see the back areas of the Las Vegas casinos.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So I'm very interested in the operational
So
side of things.
I'm
cool.
doing the Captain America one in November. So
Oh, well, good on you. How
Yeah.
is that another 10K?
yeah. And I did the Star Wars one in January. So it'll be 3 10Ks in 1 year. So that's pretty good.
Oh, very
That's
cool.
like $30K.
Yeah,
That's
good on you.
not really.
I thought it was funny.
Okay.
All right, shall we roll into the news?
Let's roll away.
All right. Our first story is cause of the Cosmopolitan fire undetermined. The source is from Fox 5 Las Vegas. This is a follow-up to a story we reported back in episode 5. Fire investigators cannot determine exactly what caused the pool deck fire at the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas. The July 25th fire started in a landscape area west of the bamboo pool near the cabanas and caused about $2 million worth of damage. Improperly discarded cigarettes were found at the pool, but officials can't prove that that was the cause of the blaze. They have ruled out electrical as the cause of the fire. I think it was just carelessness. Could happen in any pool except for Planet Hollywood, because there's
Right,
nothing
because
green
nothing to burn.
except people.
Yeah, but I don't know what the pool
People's feet.
So yeah, maybe someone left a cigarette on a pool chair or something. Who knows? It's undetermined.
Or, maybe they had their glasses and then the sun hit it and, created a little sunspot. We don't know. I just hope they have really good insurance.
Well, that's why they determined that it wasn't electrical for the insurance reasons.
Yeah.
On to our next discussion. 28 things to do this September.
Though spring is here, to me it's still September.
Sources from Rob Cakeries
From Rob.
via Thrillist.com. Love Thrillist. It's great. It's a great website.
Yeah.
Every month, Rob puts together a great list of things to do in Las Vegas. Here are a few of the highlights for this month. So all month, try an escape room. Use your brain to gather clues, figure out puzzles to escape a themed room. Live Escape Games is offering 15% off when you book online using the code Thrillist. That's THRILLIST. September 18th, get Oktoberfest started the right way. The only authentic German beer hall in Vegas starts its Oktoberfest celebration with a keg tapping at 7 p.m. and a Stein holding contest where you could win a grand prize of dinner for 10.
And just to jump in real quick, that's at the Hofbrauhaus, which is across the street from the Hard Rock.
Other cool activities he's included are cocktails at the Neon Boneyard, a Frank Sinatra cooking class, and a Giotto wine pairing dinner. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Escape rooms. Those are super, super popular in Los Angeles, too.
What does that mean? Escape room?
Yeah, like
So we throw you into a room and we'll lock the door. You got to
and
figure out how
there's
to
a
get
ton
out.
of puzzles to
I
get out.
assume, yeah.
And people pay to get out, Aaron.
Yeah.
Like, you know how I paid to run in a circle? People paid to get out of a room that they paid to get into.
And it's like,
You've never heard of the escape rooms yet?
Aaron lives under a rock.
Okay.
I do, but it's a nice rock with computers in it.
That would be a fun event. I think Aaron would really enjoy it because they challenge you with puzzles and you have to figure out using clues how to get out of the
I don't know if he'd like that. I like that stuff, but I don't know.
I'd prefer to control someone else by walkie-talkie that's in the maze.
Well, it's not a maze. It's just one room, and then you have to look through.
Sometimes they have like a zombie that like inches closer to you, like kind of like Saw. Like
they have that
Saw.
one too. They have a couple different versions of this maze room. So that's just another one of the things that they've set up in Las Vegas that Rob brings to our attention. The reason why I wanted to mention it is because every month over at Thrillist.com, he does some really cool lists.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to bring it to the show.
And the only other thing I would love to do is the Giada wine pairing dinner. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, those are just a few of the amazing things that he brings. So go check him out over on this site, over at Thrillist.com, Las Vegas.
On to our next news story. Mirage tests drink voucher system.
'Cause I've got a golden ticket.
The source is from vitalvegas.com. On a recent episode of 500 by Midnight podcast, the host discussed a new drink ticket system that was tested at the Mirage. The Vital Vegas blog investigated further, and here's what they discovered. VitalVegas.com went to the Mirage lobby bar, put $20 into a video poker machine, and then was comped a drink. After that, he reports you have to earn your drinks based on the denominations you're playing and the length of play. The machine is programmed to give you a drink ticket once certain criteria is met. In his case, he played a 25-cent max bet for an hour before he received another comp drink. The Mirage is owned by the MGM Resorts.
Okay, this one's all kind of BS.
Well, I mean, it's like an unwritten law that when you go to Vegas and you gamble, you get drinks.
I mean, this is one of the things that we've talked about before. I know I've complained to Aaron about this exact thing before.
Yes, you have.
When I went to the Aria and I was playing video poker, and I got a drink right away, and then I had to wait another hour for another drink. I don't drink that much, so it doesn't really bother me, but the idea of making you wait to have another drink is not the way that it used to be done. And
it's all the principle to you.
It is.
The principle of the matter. You don't want it, but you want them to offer it.
Yeah. It's just one of those changes that's happened that I'm really not thrilled with, and I will go somewhere else that still has the regular policy in place.
They're crying. I know they're crying over that loss.
Well,
they're like, oh no, Chris isn't here.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that they're doing this on purpose to push people like me away from...
No, they're doing this to save money. And that's plain and simple.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I thought about is they're giving the drinks away for free. However, they have a huge club scene where they sell the alcohol for top dollar. You have these young rich kids coming in doing bottle service. So if they could sell the alcohol, what's the point of giving it away for free?
Yeah, they're trying to save money.
They don't give the good stuff away for free.
No, it's beer and some bottom shelf liquor.
Yeah, watered down.
But what I'm saying is, has the mid-level gambler, because gambling is no longer the top revenue generator for a casino, are they intentionally trying to chase away the mid-level gambler from their establishments?
Well, it's not a law. It's an unwritten law. That's what people do.
Right.
So how do we find ways to change our expenses? How do we cut corners in a way that isn't cutting the whole idea of, the drink rule?
Right.
So I would say it kind of makes sense. They just put math to it. They say, you spend this much money. Mm-hmm. We're going to give you drinks accordingly to what you think is profitable to us. Right. So what do you think the margin is versus the amount? I think there's like a margin or a percentage versus the amount you're actually spending. So they look at if you're betting a max on the machine, or you're betting half the max or partially the max, not depending on the amount. I think at one point, if you're playing dollar slots and you were betting $5 per bet, they were going to give you drinks like crazy.
And I acknowledge I'm being conspiracy theorist. I know that's not what they're doing. But I just, I'm just thinking about it. Is this their plan? Just throwing it out there? No.
It may, if you look at the other side of the coin, though, it may not be bad for all gamblers. So, for instance, if you get a voucher, then that could let you enjoy the drink at another time, or potentially
is there an expiration time on the voucher?
I think one day.
But either way, you could save up your drinks and have a bunch of drinks at night rather than, having the drink when they feel like it. I don't like playing the free drinks game. You will play the free drinks game. You'll jump through the hoops, and do what they want to get the free drinks. I don't like sitting at the table and then waiting, ordering the drink, and then feeling obligated to wait there until the waitress comes back, and they're intentionally sitting there to make sure that you play more. So I don't mind the voucher idea, and a lot of the games that I play are in the less popular areas, like the video roulette areas and potentially some of the slot areas. So those are areas that don't see a lot of the attention. I do play the table games as well, but the table games are really where you see the waitresses circling. So this does kind of even the playing field for everyone getting the same sort of percent comp.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it takes the discretion away from the waitresses who just give drinks to anyone they could so that they can get a tip per drink.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, this is something that they are testing out only at the Mirage, as far as I know. This as recently as a few days ago when this story was originally reported.
Let's move on to our last news topic. Las Vegas Pride, September 18th through the 19th.
Baby, you were born this way. Lesbian, transgender life. I'm on the right track. Baby, I was born to survive.
Source is LasVegasPride.org. Pride weekend gets kicked off with the 17th annual Pride Night Parade, which will be held on September 18th in downtown Las Vegas. The pre-show starts at the main stage at 7 p.m. with the parade at 8 p.m. On the 19th, the family-friendly festival parade will be taking place at the Clark County Government Center Amphitheater and will feature over 100 exhibitors and great local talent. Adult tickets for the festival are $15, youth are $10, children 12 and under are free. We will provide all the links to these events and the cool stuff you heard in our news on our website, facesandaceslv.com.
Family friendly? What goes on at the non-family friendly event?
Well, I mean, there's shirts that are questionable that I see people wear.
Exactly.
I see. So
but other
you get
than
free
that,
dress. That's what the adult is.
I think it's great to have both.
Oh,
not just one or the other,
yeah.
You know?
The evening parades, typically the ones that I've been to, it's a lot of fun, but they can be a little bit racy, a lot of assless chaps, on the parades. I don't know if I would necessarily call that family entertainment, but it's, racy, it's saucy. And then they have the day festivals where they have the food trucks and the games and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
at the park where you could go with your family and sit and have a blanket picnic and all that kind of stuff.
And that's what happened in Vegas.
This week in the Faces part of the show, we're doing something special. We normally feature someone from the city of Las Vegas who can share with us their life experiences in the city. This week, we're taking a slight detour from that to talk to the co-director of the UCLA Gambling Studies program, Dr. Timothy Fong. Let's be honest, the city of Las Vegas was built on gamblers, also in large part gambling addicts. We want to learn a little bit about how the addict's mind works and what treatment solutions there are out there for them. We realize this is a heavy topic to take on, especially for a goofy little podcast like ours. We usually like to keep it light and fun. This week, we're going to make it light and fun and educational. Dr. Fong started the program back in 2005 with Dr. Richard Rosenthal. Since then, they have conducted research to learn about the causes of gambling addiction, and they've used that research to come up with some treatment options. Dr. Fong, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get started with your background. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you went to school?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And so I grew up in Chicago. I'm a native Chicagoan, in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to college at Northwestern and did a English and biology major there, which set the foundation for becoming a psychiatrist, trying to understand human behaviors. Went to medical school at Northwestern from 1994 to 1998. And at the time, riverboat casinos in Illinois were becoming all the rage. So now we can get in our cars and drive down after a study break and go hit the riverboats and gamble as part of the entertainment. And one of my very close friends in medical school would start going all the time, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. His grades really started to suffer. And we would begin to joke, oh man, you got a gambling problem, you need to stop. He's like, no, I got it under control. But he would do things like lie to his parents about how much he would be gambling, blow off class, not really do well on rotations. And when it came time to graduate, he graduated on time, but he had to take an extra year. And he didn't really get the residency he wanted. And it really led me to wonder, did he have a gambling addiction all this time? I would oftentimes go with him, but I'd stop and I'd watch him lose and being late in the night. It just led me to wonder, what are the signs of gambling addiction? So that got me interested in understanding gambling. And I said after medical school, well, where can I go to really learn and understand gambling from a scientific perspective? Well, Las Vegas didn't really have a lot of psychiatry residency programs.
Yeah.
And here, lo and behold, UCLA emerged as a leading psychiatry residency program. I was very fortunate to match out here. That was 1998. And one of the first things I saw coming in on the plane, was a sign for the Hollywood Park Casino. And I had no idea that there was gambling in Los Angeles. And that was back in 1998. And that really started the interest for me to study and understand gambling behaviors from all sorts of perspectives, biological, psychological, and a social perspective. That's kind of how I got my started.
Okay. By the way, just so the listening audience is aware, Aaron is joining us for this interview.
I am joining us.
Aaron had a keen interest in speaking with Dr. Fong.
I'll jump in for a few questions here and there.
Yeah. Can you talk about what are some of the symptoms for gambling addiction?
So the way I think about this very simply is when somebody gambles and it creates harm to their life, it's probably a problem. It's probably an addiction. We have a whole set of diagnostic criteria or signs and symptoms that tell us when it meets the criteria for gambling addiction. And some of these things might be inability to cut down, preoccupation with gambling, tolerance to gambling, withdrawal symptoms when you can't gamble. I like to boil it down to, though, very simply, if you continue to gamble and it improves the quality of your life, that's not an addiction. That's a hobby. That's a passion. It's an activity you love to do. If you gamble repeatedly and on an ongoing basis and it causes you damage and stress and psychological harm and physical harm, that's an addiction. So unlike heart disease or high blood pressure or asthma, where we can do a simple blood test or a simple body scan to say, yes, you have this disease or you don't. With gambling addiction, we really don't have that. We have to base our diagnosis on a clinical interview and compare it to a list of symptoms that we've created and the whole world's created and accepted as the actual definition of gambling addiction, which we now call gambling disorder. So it used to be called gambling addiction or compulsive gambling, pathological gambling. We now call it gambling disorder.
Just as a follow-up to that, do you see any personal responsibility in gambling? Or is it something that you can say, like, someone has diabetes, they can't control it? Is that something that when it's a gambling disorder, that someone has a choice in the matter?
And this is part of what leads to a lot of the stigma. People will say, oh man, he lost all his money. That's not the casino's fault. That's his own fault. He was greedy. He was a degenerate. It's his own fault. He shouldn't have done that. I mean, it goes all the way back to American view on gambling. We had incredible ambivalence about gambling as an activity. We love it. We hate it. It's been called robbery with consent. So the way I think about personal responsibility, like any disease known to man, there's always a degree of personal responsibility. You have biological risk factors that you can't control, like genetic risk factors that predispose one to develop gambling addiction. But then there are social risk factors and psychological risk factors. And absolutely every single patient I've seen through the last 15 years, none of them has said, I want to become a gambling addict. But they all said in the very beginning, gambling was available, gambling was accessible, it was interesting, and it was fun in the beginning. But something happened and it switched over. So I think, if anything, when you do get diagnosed, there's an even greater responsibility to say, you do have a diagnosis, and now you really have to take care of your brain as well as taking care of your psychology and your personal space to make sure that you don't develop more problems. But when it boils down to who's responsible for developing this disorder, it's everybody. It's the person, it's the culture, it's access to gambling, it's doctors and therapists not catching it at an early stage. It's a chronic relapsing addiction. And that's how we view it nowadays in 2015.
That's interesting that you said the doctors didn't catch it at an early stage. Does that mean that there are actual physical symptoms that doctors can see? Or, how would they catch it at an early stage?
Yeah, and those are some of the things we're working on. So think like cancer, right? An early stage is going to be like a lump or a bump or a lymph node. With gambling disorder, we see it as high levels of impulsivity, risk-taking behaviors at an early stage. When you first start gambling, you notice something, an intense high, an intense pleasure, an intense wow. And we all have friends like that when we go on trips to Vegas, and invariably there's one or two people there that you're like, whoa, that person really loves Vegas. And people start to laugh and question, and that person may have vanished for half the weekend, and they're staying up all night, and you're left wondering, well, how come they're doing that? So the early stages are going to be an intense relationship with gambling, an intense experience, with gambling, where they're just really drawn in. A lot of our patients describe that very thing. They say, the first time I started gambling when I was a kid, or the first time I walked inside a casino, I felt alive. I felt better than ever. I felt like this was a friend that I had been missing my entire life. And to me, those are not necessarily just normative, healthy things that occur early on. So gambling addiction is a disease where it doesn't occur overnight. You have to gamble pretty regularly and pretty consistently before you start to have these signs and symptoms. So as an example, here in our treatment data, we know that it takes about anywhere between 8 to 10 years from the time you place your first bet until the time you meet full criteria symptoms of the actual disease.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the same way with alcohol and cocaine and even heroin. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while for those symptoms to develop. And essentially the way we think about it is that it takes the brain, some time to develop damage from the ongoing behaviors. And then once that damage happens, that's when you get the symptoms, the loss of control, the inability to stop, continuing to go on, even though in the face of devastating consequences, and you still gamble.
Let's say you've been diagnosed with, and again, what was the phrase that you used? Because it's no longer gambling addiction, it is gambling disorder. What are some of the treatment options?
Well, gambling disorder is filed in the same categories of addiction. So just like alcohol, drug, chemical addictions. So the treatments that are available currently are very similar. So we have a combination of some medications that help reduce the urges and cravings of gambling, medications to treat the depression, the anxiety, the poor sleep that trigger ongoing gambling. And then the bulk of it is going to be individual one-on-one therapy. It's going to be working with the person to develop motivations to stop gambling, developing alternative ways to live their life in a healthy way. And then, of course, we have 12-step support through Gamblers Anonymous and families and friends. I'll give you an example of someone who I saw earlier today when she struggles with gambling, and she has this persistent false belief that if she keeps playing a certain slot machine, eventually that slot machine will pay off.
Isn't how it works?
That doesn't how it works,
Because I've lived by that my whole life.
It's part of the gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is this psychological phenomena. Like if black has come up 10 times in a row in roulette, that red is quote due.
And it is.
And then, and that the gambler then doubles up or triples up. Well, math doesn't change.
Right.
It's the same independent time every time. But gamblers have this insistence that if I keep playing this machine, it's got to play out. It's got to pay out big. And so the whole hour was spent working with her, going through math, going through statistics, and having her reframe and understand that even if you play that machine for 24 hours straight, it doesn't mean it's going to pay out at hour 25.
Well, see, that's interesting because there's another couple things that you just hit on. First is you said she. Do you see a bias towards men or women, or does the disorder pretty much pop up the same in both genders?
No, I mean, there's definitely a split. So for a long time, I would call from 1970s to the late 90s, it'd be about 80% men to women who were coming into treatment. And also when you do just survey data to look around to see what the disease is like, it was also about 3-to-1 male to female. As gambling has become much more available, accessible, and approvable in the country, and for women to be gambling as well, that gender gap is shrinking. So this is one area where women are catching up to men, And nowadays, when we look at our California gambling treatment data, it's about 60% men, 40% women. So what we do know is that women experience gambling problems just like men do, but they tend to hide it a lot more and tends to still be a lot more shameful for women. But absolutely. And we've seen women, poker players, slot machines, internet. Again, it goes back in part, I think, to the expansion of gambling in the last 25, 30 years and the acceptance of gambling, not just as an activity, recreational activity, but it's okay if men do it, it's okay if women do it. So it's really promoted, throughout our culture.
And then just the follow-up, and this, now that I think about it, you didn't say this, but I think this is just what I imagined in my head because of my most recent visit to Vegas. I sat at a blackjack table with a young Asian girl, and we just played for a couple hours, and she was like a machine. She knew what to do. She just played it by the book. Asians, is there a cultural bias that you've seen when it comes to gambling?
When we first started, our gambling studies program was really meant to look at the neurobiology of gambling addiction. About 4 years into our program's work, we were starting to receive a lot of calls from Asian nonprofit agencies saying, can you please look at this issue because it is a major issue in the Asian communities. Myself being a second-generation Asian American, I've always known this. I've seen this in the casinos. I've been throughout the world. I was in Sweden. I saw a huge number of Asians there. So that led us to do about a couple of years of work examining this issue. And absolutely, we uncovered that there is certainly increased demand for gambling amongst Asian American cultures. And there were a lot of these cultural factors that led Asians not only to want to gamble, but to demand it as part of growing up, as part of the culture. But what we couldn't uncover is which of those specific cultural factors led to gambling addiction. We just know that Asian Americans love to gamble. It reaches that level where we begin to stereotype, and I think that's certainly dangerous. At the same time, the prevalence rates in the surveys we've conducted shows much higher than expected rates of gambling disorder in Asian American communities than you would ever expect. So San Francisco, Chinatown, their rates were as high as 35% of the community struggling with gambling addiction, whereas the general population rate is somewhere in the order of 1% to 2%.
Wow.
Same thing we replicated at that study down here, went down to a local card club and found inside the card club about 40% of the clientele at any given time were of Asian American ethnicity, which is about 3 times the general population here in California. And about 40% of those men and women also struggling with gambling disorder. So it's a fascinating cultural phenomenon. There's certainly a lot of things that go into it. And it is something that we look at.
So we know that anyone can have a gambling disorder, but are there socioeconomic factors that make someone have, let's say, a higher or lower propensity for this disorder?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. We know that poverty and folks with, financial strain are going to be more susceptible to damage from their gambling. So the real risk factor is when you lose and you create damage, does that damage then lead to harm? In other words, does it harm your individual psyche? Does it harm your social standing? Does it harm your ability to get stuff done? And so some men and women can lose just a few dollars per week, and it creates tremendous harm to them. Lying to their spouse, financial strain, lots of time spent. Or we also have comparison other men and women who can lose thousands of dollars a week, and it doesn't bother them at all. So that's the case where we see, again, with a lot of the millionaires or some of the celebrities we see who pour in hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into the casino, and it doesn't really damage their overall lifestyle. But absolutely, being poor certainly is one of the major risk factors that leads one to develop gambling problems. And one would argue just because you have a lower ceiling, you have a lower floor when you do lose money, and that's going to create and trigger damage and harm. And it's what you do once that harm starts to happen that really defines whether you have a gambling addiction or not.
Yeah, and I was talking to Chris a little bit about this prior to our interview, and my point was if you spend 100% of your income, every cent you have, that indicates a very serious problem versus someone else who eventually stops.
Right. Yeah. And so what happened a few years ago, there was a researcher, I forget who it was, who came up with this 2% rule, the idea that if you spent more than 2% of your gross income on gambling per year. That would put you in the zone of, quote, risky gambling, and that you should then be explored on a further level whether or not you have some of these signs of gambling disorder. It sounds good on paper. Let's say you make $100,000 a year through this podcast, and you spend $2,000 of that every year. You can say, oh, that's, a small amount, but it doesn't always hold up, because what really matters is that gambling expenditure should be part of your entertainment budget. So what we see, though, is some gamblers where their entertainment budget's like 70% of their salaries, and others, their gambling budget is only 2% because they spend on other things. So it really depends. So I've had patients where they spend and pour all their money into gambling for entertainment. They don't have clothes. They don't go shopping. They don't go on vacation. They don't go to movies. And I have other patients who gambling is just one small part of it, and they spend on lots of other things. So it's not as simple as just saying 2% or 5%. But again, what we look at isn't how much you gamble, how frequent you gamble. It's always about what is the impact of that gambling episode? What is the impact of that gambling behavior on your life? So the theme we used to say, and it still holds up, although all of us can gamble compulsively, only a few of us can actually become compulsive gamblers.
I find it interesting. Does it necessarily have to be financial? For example, for a person who's addicted to gambling, let's say a person is married, addicted to gambling. What if their spouse says, hey, let's play some poker, and the loser has to take out the trash for the next week, make a fun game out of it where there's a negative consequence, but it's not necessarily an unhealthy, after you have to wash the cars for the next 3 weeks. Does that satisfy the thirst for a gambling addict, or do finances have to be involved?
No, it doesn't always have to be finances. We've seen patients through the year where their finances are completely rock solid. Exactly. They owe lots of other stuff to other people. It might be, again, usually in the form of their time or services. I had one patient particularly with a lot of sexual debt that she owed, and she didn't, wasn't sure how she was going to pay it back. And it was over, I think it was like 15 guys that she owed sexual favors to because of her gambling. That's pretty problematic. Yeah. And so you start to hear these things. Again, it's always about the impact of your wagering, what happens. So, and it goes back to the larger question of just defining gambling. We define gambling very simply as placing something of value at risk to be lost on an event of uncertain outcome with the intent of trying to win a larger reward. With that in mind, that's why stocks certainly fall into the realm of gambling. That's why real estate falls into the realm of gambling. That's why same-day fantasy sports is gambling. But traditionally, when we think of gambling, we think of the brick-and-mortar casino games, the slots, the table games, the lottery, sports betting, bookies, and things like that.
Yeah. Is there a point where a gambler will know that you've discovered that a gambler will no longer find interest in a game? For example, right now in Vegas, a lot of the table games are turning from, blackjack specifically, turning from a 6-to-5 pay, from a 3-to-2 pay to a 6-to-5 pay on a blackjack. For me, that's enough to say, hey, okay, I'm not going to play that game. Is there a point for a gambler where they no longer want to play? Have you found where that is? Is it different for every?
It's interesting. No, we haven't. And that's one area of gambling research, and really diving into the specific aspects of each game. Which game is more potent or, quote, more potentially addictive than the others. We tend to think slots is very addictive. And here in California, that's far and away the number one form of gambling that people report having trouble with when they come into treatment. But in part, that's because that's the biggest form of gambling. And it's 24 hours and it's nonstop, and you can just put tons of bets on it at one time. Yeah. Again, most folks with gambling disorder, when they come in, it isn't about the game or the gambling itself. It's about the gambling doing something for them. Escape, fulfilling a need, allowing them to avoid something, responsibilities, depression, seeking the high from the win. So many of the gamblers, in fact, that's one of our screening tools, is when someone tells me that they're not even paying attention to the rules or the betting patterns or abandoning basic strategy, I know that means they're really not in it for sport. They're just in it for the sake of betting. That's really not a healthy way of approaching, particularly some of the table games. even in slots, there's, these systems that people play in slots, like putting your hand on the slot machines and feeling the temperature.
Oh, yeah.
Or, going by the bathroom thinking that those are the ones that pay out more.
Oh, yeah. The ones by the front door. Those
there's
pay
a whole
out the
system.
best.
We hear all these systems. I write all these systems down. And none of them have worked. I've tested them.
Yeah.
But that's just the premise, though, is this idea that we haven't reached that point where if you change the odds on these traditional table games, eventually the public will say, no, I don't want to do it. No, that's no good. And then the casinos will change it back. So that's where the advantage of casinos will always have over researchers, is that they can adjust and change the terms of the game and determine whether or not only social gamblers, but also gambling disorder folks will actually like that. Slots are a perfect example. So they're set, for a certain payout schedule.
Right.
You set it too high versus too low. You're going to get either, no play on it, or you're going to get way too much play on it.
Yeah.
So they're always constantly, but each slot machine isn't set at the identical payout. They're all at different levels. So where it comes to blackjack, when you look at something like, as quote, tried and true, 6-5 or 3-2 payout on, blackjack. Well, at some point, blackjack didn't always pay out 3-2, not when it was first created. So it's an example where people are always trying to change the games a little bit. But when it comes to our patients with gambling disorder, they really don't pay attention to those rules as much as just being able to gamble in of itself. Now, I have had some patients that insist on gambling in certain settings. For instance, not having anybody else around them, buying up all 7 spots on a blackjack table, or having a craps table out of themselves. Those are kind of quirks and things, but it ties into, again, a lot of superstition. So a lot of gamblers, both socially as well as pathological gamblers, employ this human thing of superstition, of trying to control that which is beyond our control. That's a basic human thing that we all do.
Are those indicators of some other type of disorder? For example, I know some guys will say, I have to wear these socks to watch this football game.
I think that's the fascinating part of studying gambling behavior, is that gambling behavior is part of who we are as humans. We have to do this.
And then it makes it fun, too. It adds to the fun.
But that's what makes us feel alive. Yeah. Should I do the podcast, or should I get a real paying job in a 9-to-5 office? That's part of gamble. Do I take the 10 or do I take the 405 to get to where I need to go? So that's all part of it. So I think the superstition parts are all part of our human nature to try and control everything. Think about back to college. I had superstitions. I had to play Twin Peaks soundtrack before every exam.
Oh, that's funny.
And if I didn't, I was concerned I would get a poor grade. So,
interesting.
Works for me.
Yeah.
So I still have that soundtrack.
And there was no harm to it. So, okay. So you are creating different types of therapy, different types of solutions for those who have a gambling disorder. Has there been any backlash from anybody in the gaming industry who have approached you and said, hey, you're taking away our customers?
No, in fact, we're partners with a lot of members of the gaming industry. So whether it be some of the Las Vegas casinos or Native American casinos here in California, horse racing, lottery, card clubs here in California, we've worked with them all. Yeah. We've never had any sort of negative feedback from gaming industry. And I think in part because the gaming industry has been very smart about this through the years. They saw the lessons that Big Tobacco learned, where if you hide what your product really is, if you deliberately target and be predatory toward people who are very vulnerable, that looks bad. They've been very open. Remember, all gambling, legalized forms of gambling, are highly regulated industries. Yeah. So they're bound to run their business in certain ways. Some states, including California, does mandate they have to do responsible gambling training to their staff so people know what the signs and symptoms of gambling addiction are, so they know how to get help when people are wondering. So, no, I thought in the very beginning the same thing. I thought, we're going to create some of these treatments and these programs. And the next thing I'm going to get a big axe through my door, from a casino, but that hasn't been true at all. In fact,
because there are the rumors that
there's always rumors and myths, and if anything, they're the ones really the most interested in hearing about what we have to do, because they have a lot to lose too.
Well, let's keep your enemies closer is what.
Well, I wouldn't go with enemies.
Keep your friends close.
But the irony is that there's been a lot of lawsuits against casinos by men and women with gambling disorders to say, hey, I have this addiction.
Okay.
You fed me this addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You promoted it. Therefore, I'm suing you and I want my money back.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge and awareness, I don't think a single one of those cases have actually sided with the plaintiff. So there's still this dilemma that we say, well, if you do have this disease and addiction, again, who is responsible for you to stop that disease? Who's responsible if that disease continues unchecked? So a lot of interesting questions. We don't always have the right answer, but I feel safe at night. I don't feel like any casinos are going to hunt us down in any way.
To speak to that a little bit, we all know that the casinos are really good-natured people who want everyone to not gamble and know the risks and stuff, like you mentioned. But are there other things that the casino does to take advantage of a gambler or someone who has a propensity to have a gambling problem, like putting something in the air, doing something a certain color?
Oh, right. The old wives' tale of putting oxygen in the casino.
Yeah, and that may in general help with everyone. If everyone has a 5% greater chance of gambling, but is there anything they do specifically that targets people with addiction that could be grounds for a litigation, maybe?
We've heard a lot of stories through the years. I haven't seen any convincing proof to see that. Again, all the interactions I've had with casino owners and administrative folks has always been very corporate line. It's like, it would be very bad for business for us to do something like that. For my own patients, I've heard tales of them talking about casino hosts flying them out and getting offers, but it's hard to know how much the casino really knew about that. You hear these myths about, get this guy in so he can make our third quarter line, and I just haven't seen that actually tailed out. Part of the mystique about what casinos like to create about themselves is this air of anything can happen, and everything does happen. That's why you think classically with Vegas, and you guys know this as well as I. The mob, action, corporations, hidden cameras. But if I told you that my office was full of scantily clad women, money, alcohol, people from all walks of life who are walking in with the mentality to party, you'd be like, I want to hang out in that office too.
Sounds like a fun office.
It sounds like a fun. You don't need to pump oxygen. You don't need to do those things that people say. And it goes back to that humanness that we all have, is that we all want to be experts and we all want to be able to explain the things that are unexplainable. And I think oftentimes when people walk inside a casino and their adrenaline starts pumping and they have an amazing time, they want to say, I'm part of something special. And I did feel, revived. They must be doing these things. I've talked to a lot of casino owners about why the design is so confusing in the maze. And, of course you hear that saying, oh, well, they make it confusing so that people will then gamble more. Well, intuitively, that doesn't make a lot of sense where, I'm lost, I'm wandering around. Oh, you know what? Let me play some more blackjack. I might as well. I'm lost. I can't find the exit. And it doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense. I think instead they use it because that really maximizes floor space.
Just so we get to the human side of this, what's your favorite game when you go to Vegas? What do you like to play?
Well, as a gambling researcher, it really is part of my job to know what all the games are like.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes part of the very interesting part of our job is to go to casinos and see what people are playing, talk to clients, try them out, and I find them all interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call one or more of them, quote, my favorite. I'm from Chicago. I'm a big sports fan, so I still enjoy, watching sports and placing some wagers on teams that I love.
And mind you, here's why we ask, because like I was saying, there's the human side of it. You do the clinical research, you find out about it. However, I think you made a great point earlier that you have to know what it is that you're talking about.
Right.
And so you don't abstain from gambling because this is what you research. There is a recreational side to this, and I don't think it compromises you in any way. I think it, in fact, makes you more of an expert on the topic.
It's interesting. In the beginning, the first few years, a lot of times patients would ask me, or other researchers would say, well, how long have you been in recovery? Are you in addiction recovery? And oftentimes I'd say, no, I'm not. And then they would say, well, how can you treat this? But then we also go back to, you don't have to be having HIV to be a HIV expert.
Well, or even say no one would expect a sex addiction therapist to abstain from sex.
Correct. I mean, again, it goes back to gambling is a legal activity. It's a highly popular activity. Yeah. And, it's part of what we do as human nature. Yeah. I will say that my own personal relationship with gambling has changed over the years. I mean, comparatively, when I was, in college and med student, it was very different. Back then, it really was like almost seen as a way of making money. As a poor student, I thought, well, I can actually make some money. Yeah. Now it really is more about social and recreational entertainment. Yeah. And for me, to be honest, get more enjoyment out of talking to people at the casinos and
at the tables.
Kind of hearing their stories and their superstitions and what they think. And that does help me inform some of the questions and some of the things we incorporate into treatment about what people are thinking about and how they're doing it. So, do
you introduce yourself that way when you're talking to someone at the table? Or do you just
generally not. I don't wear my pager in the casino. I don't wear an ID badge. And, right. It is funny that at one point, I took a class on how to play craps. It was here in Los Angeles, LA City College, and it was a class, and it was fascinating. It was like a 2-week class, and we learned all about how to play it. And at the last session, the teacher was showing us that you can control the axis of the dice by just gripping the dice a certain way and having this arm angle, and you can basically make any number come up. And he's like, okay, let's go into our breakout groups and let's try this and let's roll some numbers. And I just always remember that as such a funny story because it symbolizes all that what we have about gambling. It's about hope. It's about control. It's about fate. It's about changing my fortune. It's about games. It's about making friends. That's what it should be about. It's entertainment and it's life. What it shouldn't be about, it shouldn't be the sole thing that brings you peace. It shouldn't be the only thing you do for escape from this world.
When you go to the casino, and typically over by the ATM machine, the money changing machine, you see the when the fun stops pamphlet, which is there to help those that are a little bit out of control gaming. Why, and again, your opinion, why do we not see that when the fun stops in front of the buffet or over at the bar? Why are gamblers singled out at the casinos for addiction as opposed to any other type of addiction? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a great answer on that. I mean, again, it goes back to regulation of casinos. So the reason they have those helpline numbers are up there are because the state tells them to. The state doesn't tell them that they had to put them around, alcohol or the number of calories in the buffet or, smoking inside casinos is tolerated in a lot of places, and people are certainly aware of that. I think it goes back to, again, part of our relationship with casinos and what we're comfortable with. People don't want to walk into a place of entertainment and be reminded that this is scary and you could lose your life and there are all sorts of problems. At the same time, when you go into a concert, you don't walk in and immediately the first thing you say is that you could damage your eardrums tonight. And again, I think it goes back to our relationship with gambling as a culture. There's still a great degree of ambivalence. So as popular as gambling is, there's still a very large segment of our population that really detests it. And there's a lot of debate on that. I don't have crystal clear answers. I think just the more discussions we have on it. I do want to put one final plug into what we have here in California, and we have very fortunate to have a statewide treatment program for gambling disorder clients as well as family members and affected individuals. It's completely free, no cost treatment at all levels, from a residential treatment program to office outpatient treatment to telephone helpline services. All treatment services can be received by calling 1-800-GAMBLER or going online to problemgambling.ca.gov. And it's a tremendous first step, and it's a free resource for anyone struggling with gambling addiction signs and symptoms, and anyone in their own lives who they're concerned about someone else's gambling. They themselves can come in and get help. So we're very fortunate to have that treatment program available here in California.
Are those services, you say, in California, because we do have people who listen from all over the country, is that a number that they can call if out of state?
Partly, California also generates the highest amount of gambling revenue in all the states in America. So we actually generate here in California more gambling revenue than Nevada. And that's because we have tribal casinos, we have card clubs, we have a lottery, we have horse racing. So Nevada doesn't have the lottery. Our lottery generates $6 billion a year in gross revenue. So it's very successful. And as a part of that, the gambling industry and state legislators have created the Office of Problem Gambling, and through the funding that office receives direct from gambling revenues, returns to help provide treatment for those affected by this disease.
Okay, so we will actually look up national helplines and post those in the show notes.
Okay.
If you had one tip, and we'll probably use what you just plugged, the 1-800-GAMBLER number, but if you do have one tip, because we have a segment called Tip the Player, this is where we give a little piece of advice to anyone who goes gambling. Is there a good piece of advice that you would give to someone?
It's very much to have that big perspective that gambling really is about entertainment. It's meant to be a social, recreational activity. And at the end of the day or end of the night, if you're not feeling that, then I think one has to take a long, hard look at your relationship with gambling. I think that's it. It's really meant to bring people together. It's not meant to tear people apart.
It's an excellent piece of advice because we still have fun. And I think it's brought us closer together. I know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the bonding of driving 3.5 hours to Vegas. You just sit there and talk the whole time. You really get to know a person. So
by hook or by crook, and you make that one turn right as you head in, you accelerate into those two big boulders, and you make that little town turn. You see the lights, and everyone gets really excited.
Yeah, and you just cruise downhill,
right? Or you get excited, you replay the scenes from Swingers. Yeah, everyone talks about that.
Yep.
So, we've all been there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, man. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This week in the ACES segment, we are going to talk about Pizza Rock in downtown Las Vegas. Aaron, your impressions on Pizza Rock?
I'm normally a big box pizza guy. I like the big delivery brands.
Yeah.
But this place was a delightful surprise.
Yeah.
And we got 2 different pizzas. It was a lot of food.
And I just want to jump in and say, Pizza Rock, I've heard on many different other podcasts, is the bomb. Are the kids still saying that, Katie?
No.
Okay.
I don't know any kids that say that.
They say it's on fleek.
It's on fleet.
Fleek.
Fleep.
Fleek.
Okay.
Fleek.
It's really good.
And I'm the youngest one here.
Okay, so all the other podcasts say that it's really good. This is one of the places that many people have recommended to me, and I have to say it lives up to the hype. One of those few places that have lived up to its reputation. Excellent, excellent pizza.
Wasn't even that long of a wait. You normally expect a significant wait. Didn't we just sit right down?
We did sit right down, but we were there on a weeknight. So I'm sure the weekends, and we were there kind of at an odd time, 9 p.m.
That is true, yeah.
So we went off outside of dinner time weekdays. So yeah, the service was fast, but take that into consideration.
We had a lot of food that day.
We did order because we wanted to sample a couple different pizzas to give the place a decent review, rather than just share one pizza and say, wow, this one is good.
And the one I ordered only came in the larger size, too. So we had a lot of food. The waitress even warned us, hey, you're ordering a lot of food, guys.
We ordered.
Aaron doesn't like when people do that to him, though.
He takes it as a challenge.
When people warn him. I'm aware. Thank you very much.
That's
what he will say.
I was able to read the menu, and I understand what I'm ordering.
Yeah, we ordered a New Yorker, which is a thinner New York-style pizza. And then we also ordered a downtown, which has a thicker crust. And I'm sorry, Katie, there were no vegan options.
It's okay.
Although there were gluten-free options and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't necessarily concern myself with that. I just want good, tasty food.
So I was a big fan of my pizza. They put these globs of cheese on the pizza, ricotta cheese.
Sliced mozzarella, tomato sauce, sliced house-link sausage, garlic, pepperoni, and ricotta cheese.
I was a big fan, and still am.
Yeah, me too. I would go back there again, and I'm dying to try another couple of pizzas. It's definitely an ace in my book.
I'm going to stick to just one pizza for me, not a couple, but yeah.
Because
I want to try.
Well, I'll go with a couple because what we did is there was like we were saying, there was too much to eat. I ended up taking the leftovers back with me because initially we were saying if on the walk back to the car, if somebody asks, hey man, can you help me out? We'll say, here's some pizza. Sorry, I can't help you out, but at least here's some food for the evening. Nobody approached us on the way to the car.
Yeah, not only did no one approach us, walking around, holding the pizza boxes, walking back and forth between people, no one even asked us for the pizza, surprisingly.
Yeah, so I took it back to the room and had it at 2 a.m. It was delicious still at 2 a.m.
It's kind of even better the next day or later. You know, the leftovers are better.
I don't recommend eating food left out for that long of a time.
I hear you, especially with cheese. It is a bit of a gamble.
You were a little scared to have my pizza a little later.
Yeah, but
yours was a little safer.
Yeah, because I ordered one that had a lot of meat on it. But it is Las Vegas, and if you're down for the gamble,
which I am,
order the extra pizzas, keep them in the room, and you'll thank yourself because when you come back after playing all night, you have food waiting for you in the room.
I'll tell you, this morning I was craving a Vegas buffet, you know, somewhere here in LA.
Yeah.
That's Vegas style buffet.
Yeah, I was following the Twitter feed all weekend and just seeing everyone partying it up over Labor Day weekend. It just broke my heart. I was just so jealous watching Labor Day weekend going off. Yeah, party. And I'm just sitting here in LA.
We could get there in a few hours, Chris.
Are we going right now?
Put the streak back together.
That's me sighing, because I know they will do it.
A couple of interesting things happened on Twitter this week. A rumor started to circulate about the MGM resorts getting rid of 3-2 blackjack altogether in favor of 6-5 blackjack pays. Many fans of blackjack posted their displeasure on Twitter and on blog message boards, and I was originally going to chime in on the subject until Adam over at the Vegas Fanboy podcast made the great suggestion that I get in touch with someone on Twitter who goes by the handle @BlackjackROI. So rather than monologue something about 3-2 versus 6-5, here's some of our conversation. The blog that you have, which is blackjackroi.wordpress.com, you make the joke that you're playing blackjack as a living. Is that true? Are you actually making a living doing so?
I wish. I have a day job, and the way I've been playing blackjack recently, I'll need to keep my day job for a while.
How long have you been playing?
I have been playing for, decades, but for real and actually paying attention to what I earn and how I play probably the past 3 years for seriously.
And just so we kind of get an idea for it, and if you don't mind saying, what is your average level of play?
I play in the $100 hand range, and, I'll walk into a casino, more money than I feel comfortable walking around with on a normal day.
Okay, which it's interesting to bring that up because if you're playing $100 a hand, that means you have a serious bankroll to manage that. The reason why I say it's interesting is because with 6-5 play, if you're a $100 hand player, does 6-5 really affect where you play?
Absolutely. I will. I have stopped going to MGM casinos more out of protest than out of 6-5 because I see the 6-5 thing being a bigger impact than just me as a player who plays at a fairly high level. Mm-hmm. I see it as a problem for the industry as a whole because they're basically stealing money from the people who don't know any better.
It's interesting because I'm a $25 a hand, sometimes $50 a hand if I'm up for the weekend player, and I don't run into a lot of 6-5 tables playing at that level. That's why I bring it up.
At Aria, last time I was out there, I could not find a $25 3-2 table.
Wow, because it has been a little while since I've been over to Aria. I've mostly been sticking to Caesars properties as of late, but I used to be a big Aria player.
Yeah, Aria's, it's a shame, too. I love the property. It's a beautiful place. I used to play there all the time, and they've lost my business because, like I said, I'll play $100 tables as my norm, but I like, when I'm with friends or in a group setting, that's not where most people want to play, so I'll go and play a $25 table, and I end up like you at a Caesars property because I can't find 3-2 anywhere else.
That's really interesting because I don't find it that hard to find a 3-2 when I go. Maybe it's because I've been playing Caesars properties and not so many MGM properties, or maybe it's the time of day that I've been playing. I was over at SLS the last time I was there, and it was all 3-2 everywhere.
That's good to hear, but my experience has been a little bit more frustrating. And, I think probably my last trip since I was with friends, I ended up doing more of the 15, 25, walking down the strip and finding, the random place to pop in and play.
Yeah.
And that's where I ran into more 6 to 5 than I would care to see.
Well, that's an interesting proposition too, because you're playing blackjack not for fun and kind of for profit, for fun and profit.
Right.
But you're also going there to have a good time. So your approach isn't necessarily, this is my business, I have to go to the casinos that offer me the best. You're hanging with your friends and you're playing where it's more convenience more so than odds.
And that's where the difference comes in. And that's actually where I got frustrated, right? Was the fact that someone like yourself or like myself who knows what we're doing and is playing at a fairly high level, we can find a 3 to 2 table and we know better than to sit down at a 6 to 5. But my friends didn't know any better, right? They're having drinks. They're putting their $15 a hand down. They get a blackjack. They get paid. I don't even do the math on 6 to 5 on 15, but you get the idea. They get less than they expected.
Yeah.
And they didn't think anything of it. And, then they've just lost they've lost their money without even knowing any better. And everyone at the table is in the same boat. They're just recreational players. Right. And over time, that difference adds up. And it makes your money go faster. If you're a, person who comes out to Vegas for a weekend and you just want to have some fun and your money goes away quicker, there's a good chance you're going to be less interested in playing.
We've seen recently the gaming revenue going down on the Strip, gaming revenue going up downtown. I don't know if it's coincidental that it's because they're still offering 3 to 2 and the Strip is changing to 6 to 5.
I think it may have a little bit, and there's a little bit more in the entertainment value downtown. They're putting a little more stress on making it fun to play and a little less about, trying to skim every nickel and dime off the player.
Do you have any suggestions on where you could find 3 to 2, some good tips on where people can find it? Because I know I have a couple places that I go to and I don't run into 6 to 5 at all by following this pattern. But are there places you specifically go to for 3 to 2?
We talked about earlier, I'm a Caesars guy, kind of like you are. And so I actually don't play at Caesars House, but I like the tier 2 Caesar properties, the Planet Hollywood, the Paris, the Bally's.
Yeah.
They offer good customer service, and on the whole, I haven't seen them except for a couple of maybe single deck or double deck. On the whole, they're at 3 to 2 in most games. Yeah.
It's a shame too. I mean, the one thing that I try not to do, because the people who I usually go to Vegas with are much younger than I am. I don't want to be the old guy saying back in the old days, Vegas was so much better when you could get $2.99 steak and eggs at 3 o'clock in the morning. And, those things aren't around anymore. So I don't want to reminisce on what's not there. But on the other hand, as I slowly see things change in front of me, I do want to say something.
Yeah. And I think that, to your point about, I think more people are writing articles, more people are tweeting about it, more people are posting the facts that things are starting to slide away, which helps, keeps things top of mind. And over time, I think the average person who comes out and visits will start to learn more, but it'll take some education from folks who really are paying attention so that it doesn't slide away without being noticed. And we end up talking in 5 years about the good old days when you could actually find a 3 to 2 table that was under $100.
Yeah. The takeaway lesson is friends don't let friends play 6 to 5.
I did, in one of my blog posts earlier, I did look a little bit about the percentages of how much you can lose over the course of a shoe if you're playing 3 to 2 versus 6 to 5, which was fairly interesting. Where you're talking about, on an average 6X shoe, you're going to get, 1.5 blackjack if you're playing by yourself.
Yeah.
And if, you add that up on a $100 table, now, obviously we're probably talking more in a $10 table.
Yeah.
But over time, if you're playing enough, you're going to end up losing a decent amount of money. If you're doing well, if you're doing poorly, you're going to lose a lot more money because you're just every single hand, you're giving away that much more of your odds to the casino.
I really do want to be passionate about this topic because I think it's wrong for them to switch it. But it's also their prerogative to switch it, and hopefully us as good consumers and capitalists will change our behavior to go to where it's more favorable for us. But I got to be honest with you, as a $25 level, when I hit a blackjack, I'm getting 2 nickels and some change back. I usually put that up for the dealer. I will put up $7.50 for the dealer on my next hand as a thank you for the blackjack, and I'll take the extra nickel and write it on top of my bet. And so that way, if I'm running a streak, I just keep taking that nickel win and keep putting it up for the dealer So that way we're riding a streak together.
Well, good for you for tipping your dealer. That is absolutely right. Like there are plenty of us. That's a whole other topic, right? Is the folks who are gamblers who don't tip. That's another issue.
Yeah.
So good for you for tipping the dealer. I have a very similar betting pattern where when my bet increments and I get a blackjack, part of the bet increment is put tip for the dealer.
Right.
So I agree with you. On the flip side, where you're saying, they have to make a living, I completely agree, right?
Yeah.
If the average consumer doesn't know the difference and it adds to entertainment value and the casino can make more money, hey, you know what? That's their prerogative. They can do that. And more power to them. It just means a little bit more work for those of us who are trying to maximize our money as we're playing.
Yeah. And mind you, I do bring that up, not to pat myself on the back to say, hey, I'm a tipper, but it's more so as a suggestion for those who play, because that way I'm not dipping into my money to make change for tips for the dealer. I'm basically taking the extra money that I went on a blackjack and just using that. So if you know what I mean, I'm not digging into my bankroll for tipping.
I think that's exactly right. And that's you're right. That's a great tip for people who are beginner players, right?
Yeah.
Is if you get an extra, it's like getting a bonus at work, right? If you get a bonus at work, put it in the 401k.
Exactly.
If you get a bonus in your blackjack play, put it into a tip.
Exactly.
Don't count it as your base money.
I was reading somewhere where they say I'm just a casual player. These 6 to 5 rules don't really affect me. But if you are spending your money and you're putting your money down at a table, why not go somewhere where the odds are the most in your favor? That just makes sense.
Completely agree. Always, yeah. Everyone should go to somewhere they have fun and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But if you can go have fun, feel comfortable, and make a little extra money, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, man. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. Is there anything that you would like to promote or plug?
I enjoyed it. If anyone wants to come see my thoughts on blackjack and my exploits as I hopefully end up as a full-time player somewhere down the road, at Blackjack ROI on Twitter.
That's going to do it for episode 8 of the Faces and Aces Las Vegas podcast. Thank you to Dr. Timothy Fong for providing important information about gambling disorder. If you live in California and would like to receive free treatment services, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER. If you live out of the state, you can call 1-800-522-4700. That information will be in the show notes where you'll find at our website, facesandaceslv.com. You could also find our email address and phone number there. Please subscribe to us over on iTunes and please give us a kind 5-star review. We are off next week, so we recommend you go check out the Vice Lounge Online podcast where they celebrate drinking, gambling, and smoking 3 cornerstones of Vegas. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Katie and Aaron, for co-hosting. And remember,
what happens in Vegas
ends up on the podcast.
Grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness, remembrance, and love have no end.
To all those who responded with such courage, on behalf of the American people, it is an honor for us to join in your memories.